I want to hold this up for a second, people. Michael Holden's book, Authenticity Deficit, What Financial Advisors Need to Be Relevant. Why this book? Why now?
Yes, sir. I think in the world that we live in, James, I think, well, there's a whole lot of hurt. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of false narratives with each of us and how we address ourselves specifically. And I think raining or not raining, how about sprinkling some sunshine on the darkness that is within us and the way we talk to ourselves is absolutely needed right now, perhaps more so than ever. And I felt called, James. I felt called, and it was tumultuous. I do believe that God doesn't call on the equipped. He equips the called.
Indeed.
And I kept trying to fight it just with the patterns of my routine. Fight the call, fight the call, fight the call. And it got to a point of, as I finished the book, it took me 2.5 years while working full time. Where I couldn't ignore it anymore. Just watching too many people suffer. I'm watching too much inauthenticity compromise our standards for the sake of metrics. So metrics have overtaken standard, and that is a huge issue.
So now let's talk about this, because I think you have a unique perspective. Walk us through your professional journey. Start with how you got into financial services.
Ooh, yes. So I come from a mixed ethnicity background. My mother's Indian. My father, who I lost in my 20s, is English, but somewhat stereotypical. When I was born, my mother proclaimed, "You will be a doctor."
Hey, can I say something real quick? Right. So we always laugh and say, "Hey, brother, we're brothers from another mother." But I've never really paid that much attention to the fact that you're Indian, right? Last night after dinner, and my wife and I have talked about this for years, we can't help but notice that many Indian people like to take a walk after dinner, right? But I've never done that. So last night when you said, "Hey, can we walk and talk?" I said, "Sure." And then it clicked. I was like, "Oh, yes, right. Michael's Indian. This may be a part of what he does culturally, right?" So we're walking, and I enjoyed it, right? I got home and told my wife, I said, I felt lighter. You know how sometimes you have that after dinner heavy feel that sets in and whatnot. I felt lighter. I felt refreshed on my feet. And so
I love that.
Thanks for inviting that last night.
I will tell you, it is not, to the best of my knowledge, I'm born and raised American, so I never really grew up with an Indian culture.
Okay.
And it even goes deeper. We're super mixed, but like everyone, I think. But my father told me as a young man, the most honest way to bond with someone is to simply walk with them. And that became a habit that's been instilled in me, where when I authentically want to bond and just be vulnerable and be open, the best way to do it is to walk.
That was good. That was a learning moment for me, because I haven't observed it before. Yeah. So sorry, I cut you off.
No.
So on your professional journey.
I lost my dad in my 20s.
Sorry.
My parents, they're both first generation Americans. And my mom came as a medical professional. She's in nursing. My mom was actually brought to this country in 1969 in the brain drain. There was a deficit of medical professionals.
Got it.
She was teaching in New Delhi, got a letter from Northwestern in Chicago. Please come to America. We'll give you citizenship. That's how she came to America.
Gotcha.
My father fixed air conditioners. Now, Mom was really good at books and really good in her profession and was called to be in the medical profession. But she never had a financial plan. And when Dad got sick and things went ugly fast and bills became something that it was either, hey, I do what I got to do to pay these bills, or I lose my husband. Well, it decimated our family.
Sure.
And it made the family virtually almost go broke. And, no financial plan. There was really no education around it. Back then, people really didn't stress the importance of having prudent planning in the event that Dad gets sick. I lost my dad when he was 60 years old to a sudden heart attack, amongst other things. But that opened my eyes that there was a definite need beyond Mom's calling for me to be a doctor, for me to go and help other families to make sure that, honestly, what happened to us didn't happen to them.
Gotcha.
And it seems like I love just speaking simply. I think I went out of my way to write this book in just clear, plain, easy to understand English.
It is. Thank you for that.
Well, I think when we get in finance, you
Yeah.
start to speak in this jargon, and people have no idea, and
Yes.
you just have circles run around you, and it's like I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And most people just want the meeting to end, And so I think speaking clearly was something that I felt called to do. So I started as a commercial underwriter,
Mhm.
and then from underwriting, I was a banker, a business banker. I was a financial advisor for several years. Then I got into management, into senior management, and then executive style management. And again, at that point, so that I just glossed over 20 plus years
No,
of.
but that's good. I mean, so you went through several layers. You didn't jump in, quote unquote, at the top. You worked your way up and have seen all these different things in terms of how financial services operates.
Yes.
In terms of the client facing and the not client facing, so to speak.
Yeah, and thanks for even saying that. For specifically, I've had my toe dipped professionally in almost every pool of retail finance.
Yeah.
So if it was finance for the masses, I did it. If it was finance specifically for a very niche group of business, I did it.
Right.
If it was the private client group, I did it. And so truly, as I sit in this chair, I have seen the many facets of all the different types of segmentations within retail finance.
Yeah. So when you sat down to start writing Authenticity Deficit, which, if I remember correctly, had 3 turns of the crank, in terms of you rewrote it.
It did.
Right?
It did. It
Twice
did.
after the original. What did you want to achieve when you started? And then we'll come later to, what you hope people take away from it. But when you first sat down, what was the thesis? What was this is the problem I want to solve?
Yeah, I think quality of care is diminished when you're not called to do it, when you're not real about doing it, and when you somewhat hold out that the quality of care is first, but it's not.
Gotcha.
It's not. Now, what I'll say too is I had this notion of in the early 1900s, they gave us the IQ, which was the intelligence quotient. And you literally had kids running around in recess bragging, I have a higher IQ than you. And the IQ was a condemnation because there was nothing you could really do about it, right? And so the IQ is somewhat of a bogus quotient. Then we get to the early 2000s. They gave us that EQ,
Right.
which I studied, the emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. I was an advocate. I am an advocate of it. It worked.
Right.
But what was so hopeful about the EQ quotient, this emotional quotient, is that you could do those push-ups and get better at it. You can actually have a awareness of what is my emotional quotient in this and see an increase or decrease and help yourself. Now, I've done it. I believe in it. So, well, what's next?
Right.
Particularly after all of these events in our society, I'm proposing that we now look and turn to the authenticity quotient. And authenticity, I mentioned it. It was a $12 word, and we keep using it and using it and
Right.
using it, where I think we're diluting something that is so powerful. Authenticity in every single facet of how we exist is, in regard to the book, authenticity is the percentage gap of what's in it for me versus how can I serve you. And we say that our quality of care is all about serving, but if we're honest with ourselves, especially in wealth management, how much about it is what's in it for me?
Yeah.
And that's a gap in authenticity. But now, to your point of writing this 2 and 3 and maybe 4 times now, I think AQ is applicable across all of our hearts, across all of the world.
Yeah.
So it's no longer, all right, I'm a financial advisor, what's in it for me? How about I'm a husband? How much am I acting on my behalf at the sake of what I'm supposed to be doing for my wife?
Yeah.
And take that to my kids. Take that to how I exist in my community. How authentic am I? How much am I serving myself versus how much I can be serving others?
Yep.
And I think humans, all of us have to feel like we're growing. I think I was sharing this with you last night. We have to feel like we're growing, and we have to feel like we're contributing. And if we rise to an occasion of, say, making money or growing a business, and we do it without an honest growth in our development and an honest contribution for the betterment of people,
Right.
we failed.
Right.
We failed.
There's so much in what you just said. So one is to your point of wanting to serve others and achieve too, right? Those two things, and I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, right? You can serve others and still, with an achievement mindset, get things done. But there's the other thing in there about that gap you mentioned between service of others and service of self, right? And one of the things I want the listeners and viewers to really hone in on is this is not limited to financial advisors. And you just started to touch on that. This is us and how we operate, period, right? And I think the cultural context obviously is what you lasered on, but this is just us. How do you think about what causes us to be less than authentic, particularly in a work context? What is causing that for financial advisors as a start?
I mentioned that I think metrics have taken over standards.
Yeah.
Right. And let me give you just a different styled example. If we think about hospitals, you demand a standard of cleanliness. Metrics say a hospital metrics would be patient bed turnover ratios. What's the velocity of getting this person in, getting them served, getting them out so that we can move the needle on revenue?
Yes.
Well, that's a metrics, right? And when standards get overlooked at the sake of driving a metrics, we've lost everything.
Yeah.
And that's for our hearts. That's for what we do professionally. That's for it all, right? Similarly, take the same analogy and put it on a restaurant. So we demand a standard of cleanliness and sanitation, and our food has to be clean, right? But also, if I'm the restaurant owner, there is a degree of, well, let's get them to the table, let's get them their food, and let's get them out so we can get the next table.
Right.
The second we start compromising the standards that we demand and that we deserve so that the bottom line could be fed with more revenue, well, are you really going to go to that restaurant? Are you really going to go die at that hospital?
Right.
And so I'm watching this happen in all sectors, be it education, be it medicine, be it the government, be it in all sectors in our country, there is an authenticity deficit where what I'm hoping to achieve is for person by person, for people to be honest with themselves and ask themselves, even if you're subservient to the bosses above you. I mean, we've all been in those situations.
We all have. Absolutely.
Where they're just pounding on you. How many widgets did you get?
Yeah.
Right? How do you be honest with yourself that you don't breach those standards that probably brought you to your job in the first place? Let's take it to another level. If it didn't bring you to that job, well, I think we have to have another conversation of, are you being authentic with the time God gave you?
Yeah.
And that leap of faith, that's a whole other show maybe.
Absolutely.
But I think these are some very serious things that we have to discuss.
Yeah.
And so it started as an honest, I just hope to get people to start talking about.
And were there a few observations that really kind of pushed you over, that broke, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Because it sounds like you had a number of observations in your corporate context, right? With working with financial advisors and whatnot. Was there a series of observations that finally made you say, that is enough? I've got to talk about this.
That's a good question. Yes and no.
Okay.
Because one of the things I mentioned in the book, and that I'll mention now, is that we don't have to have a breaking point to be closer to our authenticity.
Yeah.
If we're closer to our authenticity, we could change the job that we're in. And I'd submit to you, for 20 years, we did that.
Yeah.
I did that. I looked at things as a quality of care. I looked at clients as my patients.
Yeah.
And my dignity and my love for why I got in this thing in the first place was not compromised.
Yeah, I agree with you. We don't have to have a breaking point, but I feel like here's how I would characterize what I thought I saw and what I read. You've ascended to this position where, let's just say it, you're in top 1% income earning pool, right, in the country, if not the world. You're doing really well. And yet, it's almost like being over top of a warehouse, watching people work on what do you call them? The work streams and the belts,
the conveyor
belts, right?
Yes.
And like you're looking over the factory, and then you say, while knowing this could hurt you, this is not right.
Yes.
This is not right, not just for me, but for all of these folks and the people we say we serve. And so was that a slow burn build, or was it one morning you just said, I just can't take this anymore?
I would say both.
Okay.
I would say both, because some of the firms that I've worked at, which shall remain nameless,
we'll do that.
But some of the firms are so big,
yeah.
200, almost 300,000 employees.
Absolutely.
It's like this Titanic,
Absolutely.
right? Or to your analogy, it's this enormous warehouse. But I would say that I would go person by person. If ever I took over a territory that, say, had 50 to 100 people, I met every single person for a minimum of an hour, multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd get to know what make my people tick. Right. And in getting to know them, I would try to align what they were passionate about to what they were charged to do per day. So one advisor loves planning. Great. Let's make that the focal point of your engagement. Another advisor loves a client appreciation things. Great. Let's implement that into your practice.
Yeah.
So you pair people and you use your authority to enable your people to be their best selves.
Right.
Well, when you're told that's over, and you need to march to the drum, and you're watching things fall through the cracks, i.e. quality of care, well, then that becomes a problem. That becomes a boiling point, right? And I remember my father had given me an analogy. He was awesome at all these analogies.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he had an English accent, and I can't impersonate it, but he'd say, son, if you stand in the shadow of a person who's doing something wrong long enough,
right,
behold, you cast the same shadow.
Yeah.
And that haunts me, right?
Yep.
So to answer your question, was there a boiling point? When there were breaches and things that I thought were easily solvable, just don't do that.
Yeah.
Just don't do that.
Yeah.
Why are we pushing this hard?
Yeah.
It's not that serious.
So I'm going to use another metaphor, and I'm going to do this constantly because I want people who are in different work environments to get this, right? Let's take it to landscaping. You're a landscaping foreman. You drive to different sites and work and oversee the different teams working on different commercial and residential properties. As a part of what you started to do, your idea was, let's help our customers grow great lawns. They want the greenest lawns, the most healthy lawns that will be there year over year. We're going to plant the right shrubs and whatnot. And then you find out that the materials that are being used are not great materials. The fertilizer is subpar, the whatever, right? And you start talking to your people who do the work, and you say, well, listen, don't do that. Oh, no, but that's the fertilizer corporate sent. No. We shouldn't use that. That is over time going to kill that grass. And so then you get a call from corporate who says, hey, man, you overlooked these 25 teams that consist of about 150 people, and we heard you're telling them not to use the corporate sent fertilizer, to go get this other stuff, right? Turf good. We don't do that. And you say back, but no, the stuff you sent is going to kill that grass over time. And they say, well, but listen, that is what we're using. That scenario is kind of what I hear you saying.
Yes. And
Okay.
that scenario, well done, sir, because that is exactly this type of authenticity deficit where metrics overtake standards. Right?
Yep.
And so I've been in those situations a million times.
Yeah.
And you as an executive, I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was the type of guy for the past 20 plus years, what I would do is I would sit down and I would figure what the deficit was in the corporate issued material and use whatever I had in front of me to change it.
So so now let's talk about the different people in that scenario. You've got the guy who's the closest to the grass that puts down the fertilizer. You probably have the on-site supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have you who oversees these teams, and then you're the conduit to corporate. Let's talk about each person. For the person who's closest to the grass, what do you encourage them to do if they really feel like they're in the wrong place? Because in the book, one of the things you do really well is not only shine a spotlight and, for lack of better terms, expose what some of the challenges are, you then start highlighting decisions people may want to make. Well, actually, let me insert a step in between. You put a spotlight on and kind of expose what the challenges are. You ask people to kind of do a self-assessment of where they are, okay? And then you say, okay, if this is the place you still want to be in this profession, there are a couple different things you could do, right? You could still stay with a firm. You could hang your own shingles, do your own thing, or you could do, I forget what you call it, advisory, like be a...
Go independent.
Independent, yeah, and so on and so forth. Taking back to the example of landscaping, the guy who's closest to the grass, he does the self-assessment and say, this does not feel right. What do you suggest to him?
One is you have to start. The greatest training room is the room where you're by yourself in silence, right? That's the first. The first is you got to get honest with yourself.
Yeah.
How passionate are you about this?
Yeah.
Is this the hill that you're going to die on, right? However, you also, like, are you a rookie? Have you been doing this for 20 years? Do you have the skills to go do this and solve this problem on your own?
Meaning, can you fix the issue itself, or are you bankable to make sure you can go get another job? What are you saying?
Can you fix this problem by yourself?
Got it. Okay.
Or can you go start your own business to solve this problem?
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
Because in the book, I address senior and rookies.
Yeah.
Right? Am I being provided by this company I'm working for the best tools available for me to do the best job, just via my own integrity?
Yep.
Right? So that's the thing. And I opened with, is this the hill you're going to die on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In this analogy, if I'm the first person on the line, am I going to see that there's a huge issue here?
Right.
If I do, well, let's think of the options.
Yeah.
Right. But the biggest thing is I want people to go beyond, not like just beyond getting the job done. I really want people, this is such a formative experience for me because this is a big deal I walked away, James, from my career.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's not gloss over that.
Yes,
I mean, because in writing the book, I have to imagine that you knew, because we both know the different environments we've been in, you knew this was not going to go over well.
I absolutely knew.
How did you count that cost?
You know what? I think living a life of Excel spreadsheets and living a life of what percentage to goal.
Yeah. I
think this was not about that. I think this was about, hey, he's calling. He's calling. He's calling. And I kept doing the Heisman. Nope. I just got to get this project done. I just got to go do this. Maybe I'll go do that. Maybe. And then I found that I was not listening. And that scares me more
to God's calling.
To God's calling.
Yeah.
And that scares me more than anything.
What did the calling feel like?
Yeah. It's, when you're in silence and you're in that room, that's the mega training room, is when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
Just that in your gut that there's something in you that you need to share.
Prayer time and silent time.
Prayer, petition, thankfulness, right? And you just know, you hear it, like there is something that I was allowed to experience, that if I share it, and I share it with the family, I share it with people in the community, and you watch them change.
Right.
All of a sudden, you can see his calling through what's happening through his people. Right. And so let me say this. I am not an expert in authenticity. I opened the book by saying I am not like a guru in this, right. But I am feeling called that to at least open this conversation for us as a people to start discussing.
Yes.
Just start discussing. Are you authentically where you should be? But let's just very loosely unfold this and say, imagine if we were all so honest with ourselves.
Yes.
And we position ourselves to be in a spot where we love ourselves and we love what we're doing and we love, right? The world will be a better place.
Yes.
Authenticity will be back. I grew up in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Growing up in the 80s, having a block party was a regular thing. And you would have a Republican sit at the same table as a Democrat. No one even saw it that way.
Yes.
And people would come and tell you, well, based on my research, these are my views. And based off what I've seen, these are my views. And people would just continue with eating their hamburgers and hot dogs. It wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
People were, I would submit to you, a little bit more comfortable in their skin back then. And all of us are uncomfortable in our skin right now.
Yes.
So the only way for us to grow out of this, earn our way out of it, is to start getting comfortable in our skin.
Yeah.
And the only way to get comfortable in your skin is to be honest with yourself and start assessing every portion of your life that doesn't allow you to be honest with yourself.
Yeah. That's good. So obviously you did that, and you've probably coached some other people through doing that. I am interested that, or I do find it interesting that even though you had the calling, you didn't have the prompting to count the cost. And I'll tell you why. I remember even going through a conversation with a few folks when we were figuring out how to respond during the George Floyd moment. I remember a friend of mine saying to me, I definitely want to do something, but I know it's going to cost something. And I remember walking away from that conversation saying, yes, it will, when you make, what will be viewed as a radical change. And I say that because I think when you have a calling, to many it's radical because they don't get it. And just like I said to you last night,
Yes.
I've come to understand that God gives a vision to a person, not a committee. So there won't be 8 people around a table high-fiving. Yes, that is the calling. You've got to go when you have it. But I found myself and some other folks who you do have that moment of, oof, this is gonna, this is gonna cost something. So you didn't have that moment. So now, post you putting out the book, being vocal about the challenges and whatnot, how would you speak to what that has resulted in for you personally?
In counting the cost.
Yeah.
It's been close to 3 years that I've been working on this book.
Yeah.
And 3 times of rewriting it. And really, I had to get the buy-in and support from my wife.
Yes.
And so we did count the cost. I still slow dance with my wife often.
Nice.
When the kids watch and they have like this.
Did they just turn away?
Yeah.
Oh,
they're still young.
How old are they?
They're 7, 10, and 11.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
it's just
okay.
cheesy smile. And,
Gotcha.
And I said, honey, I feel like I'm called to do this book. I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my skin. And I've been wrestling with it for years. And by answering this call, we have to be prepared that everything in our life as we know it may have to be given to God.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right, I'm not on an executive salary anymore. I'm not independently wealthy. But I am wealthy in faith.
Yeah.
And I do believe this is part of being authentic. This is part of putting the money where your mouth is, right? Is it these companies that clothe me and feed me and provide for me?
Yes.
Or is it God?
Yeah.
Now, I think faith in the little things, like we were talking about, are easy to exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God will get me safely from Chicago to Pennsylvania. That's faith.
Right.
I have faith. Just little things, God's going to let me get over this cold. I believe, right? But then all of a sudden, it's like, well, God's the one who actually provides for how I provide.
Yeah.
My kids are his kids. My wife is his kid. My mom is his kid, right? And so I'm in a moment where, oh man, I am showing that I believe it's God who not only gives me bread, but butters my bread.
Yeah.
And I have faith. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see where this goes.
That's good.
But the truth is, dude, it ain't easy.
I know that's right. And so if you want to take this journey, one of the things you mentioned is start with the self-assessment.
Yes.
Start with the self-assessment. The second thing is, and not necessarily sequentially, but you talked about this authenticity quotient. That's interesting.
Yes.
How would that evolve?
So thanks for bringing up the assessment.
Yeah.
As I was telling you last night, that's where I just stonewalled. Okay, we got the book. It's hard to concentrate and get all that in order. But I was working on an actual test for people to take.
Got it.
And I just kept getting stuck. And finally, I just submitted it to the website to create.
Nice.
It should be done in the next 2 weeks.
Nice.
And what I'll tell you is I'm thinking for everyone on this radio station that we have a window, James, where people can take it for free.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And we'll make some sort of window where it's like, hey, go to the website.
Or a special link or something, or
put in
Holy Culture promo code.
That's
or
exactly
something.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
That'd be awesome. We can put that in the show notes. I think that'd be great.
Man, and here's my thought is just go take this test. Right. There are 25 questions. And this 25 question, it's not calculus. It's more like algebra because to take things that are profound and keep them simple is what I want to do.
Right.
Let's keep this simple. Let's ask you questions about how real do you feel with doing good at work?
Yeah.
Right? How real do you feel that you're serving your bride or your spouse? How real do you feel that you're doing what you believe or what God's called you to do as a parent? And let's gauge that 1 to 5. Let's tally that up and let's look at a score. Then what'll happen is you'll get a framework. So you hit the enter button, you finished your assessment, you're going to get a framework of suggestions based on what score you received.
Right.
And then I would say, all right, now wait 14 days, wait 7 days, wait an amount of time. Now we've just planted these frameworks. They're not like pro sports drills. They're just trying to get you to look at what's in front of you differently.
Right.
You look at it differently, come back to this test 14 days later, whatever amount of time, see how you fare. See how every day becomes different.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden, I always say, it's the dog that should wag the tail, not the tail that should wag the dog. And a lot of us are tails being wagged by the dog.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know what's going to be interesting to me? I can't wait to see this come out because it sounds like something, 25 questions. On one hand, you may say, may only take you 10 minutes, but it could take you actually a couple hours, depending on how you think through these questions. I remember going through training when I was an executive coach, when I wanted to be an executive coach. And I did executive coaching for 2 years when I left corporate while we were building up the nonprofit. And one of the things in training that was so interesting to me was this acronym, WAIT. Why am I talking?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea is you should really get the client talking and unveiling. And the closer you can get to getting the client to take a real look in the mirror, the better you are in doing your job. I mean, that's really it, right? And a lot of times in executive coaching, the most powerful words are keep going.
Right. Tell me more.
Right. Tell me more, keep going. And you're heading in the right direction, do more of it, right, et cetera. One of the things that was interesting to me as a tool is this thing called the wheel. Okay. And the wheel simply was, Michael, having the client draw out the things that were important in life to them as spokes on the wheel.
Yes, I remember.
You remember this? Okay,
yes,
right.
Yes.
So health, finances, this, that, and that, and asking them to put a number on it to see if the wheel was in balance. And you wouldn't believe how long that could take for some folks, right? They go health. Yes, I work out. That's a 10. Finance. Yes, I'm doing this. I'm doing that and doing that. And then get the family.
Your wheel just broke. Boom.
Right. Like,
yeah.
That's probably a 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to, they said taking care of their parents was important. Then they get to personal hobbies, which you need to have, and so on and so forth. And then you put the wheel in front of them and you look at the imbalance. And if that wheel were to roll, you'd be broke, right? I think this may have a similar effect of having people go through that depth of thinking about what's important to them and actually putting a score on it, or however that your scoring metric will work. I think it's going to be really interesting, man.
Man, I love that parallel because in effect, that is what this is.
Yeah.
In effect, they're similar. And I remember I was a corporate coach too.
Yes. So, okay. So you've been through the wheel.
So I've done the wheels. I've done the wheels. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That is in essence what this is.
Yeah.
And in the same spirit of, if you're honest, and to your point of, it could take you 10 minutes. It could take you 2 hours. If you're honest with yourself and you really think this through, what you put in is what you will get out.
Yes. Yes, indeed. This is an investment. So when you think about the future of financial services or financial advisor, whatever level that you want to talk about this, what do you think is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years? What do you see?
Well, I'll answer it in 2 ways. Regarding financial services, I think humans will always the most powerful way you can honor a person in love is to listen to them. And I'm watching AI. I'm watching all these programs, and digitization is real.
Yes.
Right. There will be an extraordinary amount of wealth management taken over by bot something.
Yes.
I mean, it's just common sense. I'm not some fortune teller. It's right here,
It's
right
in
now.
front of you. Yeah, absolutely.
But humans will require humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is, especially when it comes to your money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, same as such in the medicine and all fields, we can replace humans with a lot of digitization, but humans really won't allow that, right? Think about how many times you call in and they're like, press 1 for this and press 5. How many of you honestly said, stop it, I need a human, right? I mean, I know I have. I do it weekly.
Yes.
Stop, I need a human. Where do I think wealth management? I think there will be a portion that's digitized. I think there will be a portion of the the people who take these points seriously of how important active listening is, of how important it is to serve before you serve yourself,
yes,
they'll survive.
yeah,
Everyone else will be digitized, right? And that's speaking kind of business to business. On the client side, I think clients will require a person who listens to them and who actually respects them, and provides value. That's the biggest thing. Like, look, I could like you. You could take me to the proverbial baseball game per year, but if you don't provide value, I'm not rolling with you.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. So as we wrap up, if you had it your way, 2 years from now, what will you have seen as a result of this book and this effort? And you fulfilling you walking in your, I don't want to say fulfilling because I don't know if we ever fulfill it, but you walking in your calling.
You know, James, if we can provide a pathway for people who are interested, people who want this,
yes,
to be comfortable in their skin and to start assessing their environments and empower them, take the leap of faith.
Yes.
If this thing isn't feeding your soul, well, let's make a framework to formally. It's not feeding my soul because 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
And you know what? For 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 and get my power back.
Yeah.
Because so many of us are limping through the day with no energy, with no fulfillment, with no actual growth.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's what God intended for any of us.
Yeah.
And we get so lost with the robe of our patterns. I got to pay these bills. Well, I'm doing good on my numbers for the quarter. I'll start looking next quarter. And we just become subservient to walking around not fulfilled and with no energy. And a lot of us are uncomfortable in our skin because of that.
Yeah.
And that comfort, I think, is the Holy Spirit, right? I think when you can walk around and know that what you're doing with right now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, right now, if you are being used the way you feel called within that moment, your happy factor is done.
Yeah.
You don't even have to do all the stuff that people do with their yoga and this and that. You know, if it starts with, am I happy today, right now? Right. And so my hope is that people get comfortable in their skin, that they get curious to have these conversations. This book and these tests, this isn't some program. This isn't some like seminar. This is like, hey, just think differently, talk to yourself differently, be honest, right? And start assessing, look at your world through your authentic eyes and ask yourself, is this where I should be?
That's good. And, with the tools you're dropping to go alongside this is going to be great. Hey, listen, people, I need you to pick up Authenticity Deficit by my good friend and brother, Michael E. Holden. And then check the show notes because we'll have the link to the Authenticity Quotient. And you will be able to use a Holy Culture promo code, we believe.
Yes.
And be able to do it free for a limited time. So please pick up the book and be ready to go do your Authenticity Quotient work.
James, I am just so humbled by you, brother.
Oh, man, thanks, brother.
And you are a man who has answered his calling. And you know better than anyone that it ain't easy.
It's not easy.
But when you do it, you're comfortable in your skin and you know you're making the best use out of your time. And just time with you yesterday, time with you now. I'm just so thankful.
Thank you, brother.
I love you, man.
Thanks for coming. Love you too, brother.
Thank you.